to be interviewing Carroll Baker. This is sort of in three parts. We're going to talk first about Carroll Baker's long and distinguished career. Then her second career is as a writer, and she's going to be talking about her fourth published book. Just came out, Who Killed Big Al, which is for sale tonight. It's a delightful murder mystery, as we'll talk about it, with a truly surprise ending. You will not guess the ending. I'm not going to tell you, but you're not going to guess it. You have to read it to find out how it ends, and you'll be delightfully surprised. It's very clever. She wrote it herself. She not only can act, she can write. So that's two things. And then after we talk about the career and the book, we'll open the floor if you have a few questions for Carroll Baker. But let's start, because Carol, do want to know about. Are you okay?
Yeah.
People do want to know about your career and
Yes.
famous people you've worked with, but you didn't fool around. This is a woman who in 1956 made two movies, Baby Doll and Giant. Not bad as a start, would you say? And for Baby Doll, she got an Oscar nomination, and I always thought she should have won it. I saw the film as a teenager at the Crown Theater in Pasadena, California.
Teenager?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry. No, I was much older than that. I saw it.
Oh, that's like young girls used to come up to me and say, I didn't see Baby Doll because I wasn't old enough. They wouldn't let me in. It was censored, you know.
It was. But when you were making Baby Doll with Tennessee Williams and Elia Kazan, did you think that you were doing a scandalous movie?
Oh, no, not at all. And I think it's so unfair the way that film was treated. It's Tennessee Williams' only screenplay, and it is so funny. It is so wonderful. And the Catholic Legion of Decency and the Motion Picture Censorship Board disagreed, and they had been on tenterhooks for a long time. And when it was Baby Doll and the Motion Picture critics, or the Motion Picture Censorship passed it, then the Catholics banned it. Now, when I was doing Giant, I was new, and I played the daughter of Elizabeth Taylor and Rock Hudson, and the love interest of James Dean for a time. He really was in love with my mother in that film, so. Well, Warner Brothers, as I was under contract to them, they wanted me to get any kind of press I could. They wanted to see if they could make me a star. Well, people came from all the magazines and the newspapers and every place. They didn't want to see me, not when there was Elizabeth Taylor, Rock Hudson, and James Dean. So I really didn't have any kind of knowledge about how you handle the press. So Baby Doll and Giant were released practically at the same time, 1 week apart, I think it was. And knowing nothing about the press, I was in bed. It was a Sunday morning. The telephone rang. I answered it. He said, "This is Mr. So-and-so from the A&P. Your film has just been condemned by the Legion of Decency. And Cardinal Spellman has just stood up in St. Patrick's Cathedral and condemned it. Now, what do you have to say?" So I said, "Which film?"
Because you didn't think anything was wrong with Baby Doll.
Oh, no, everybody was shocked. Everybody who made it was so hurt. I mean, Tennessee Williams was so hurt, and Kazan was so hurt, and everybody was hurt.
But years later, you found out why the church condemned the film. There was a reason.
Yes, the marriage wasn't consummated, and that's a sin in the Catholic Church. I'm a Catholic, by the way, but I did the movie not knowing that they were going to bring that up, because Tennessee did it in a very funny way.
But the film is sexy in a delightful way. It is not a dirty-minded film at all. It's literature. It's art.
I hope they bring it back someday and treat it differently.
It
It's
has
got a
its
lot of
place.
laughs, yeah.
It's very funny. It's very funny.
Yeah.
Can you deliver your own favorite line from the film?
Oh,
You have a particular favorite. Every line you had is great, but one line,
yeah.
Carroll Baker delivers better than
Okay.
anybody.
I've been to school in my life, big shot, and I am a magazine reader.
And the last line of the film is a great line. Do you remember the last line of the film?
Well-
But, you know, Tennessee Williams didn't have an ending.
Yeah, there was
And then
no
a genius writes this ending for the last line of the film.
Yeah, and Tennessee came up with something that was so poetic. I thought it was so wonderful. It had to do with tomorrow. And Archie Lee looks out the window of the police car and says to the sheriff, "What's going to happen to my baby doll? What's going to happen tomorrow?" And the sheriff says, "I'm just the sheriff. I don't know nothing about tomorrow." And then up on the porch, Aunt Rose Comfort and I have our suitcases. We're waiting to see if the car is going to come and take us away. So she says, what's going to happen tomorrow?" And I said, "Well, tomorrow, Aunt Rose, we'll either be remembered or forgotten."
Yes.
Yeah,
It's a
lovely
wonderful
line,
line.
yeah.
And then, of course, the film is remembered. It really is. I think you aren't aware how important the film is considered and what a reputation it has.
Well,
It
I hope
it's
so.
a
I
wonderful
wish
film.
they'd
If you
re-release it.
haven't seen it recently, see it again. It's beautifully written and beautifully acted. You can already get a flavor of it here. But what's interesting, because I interviewed Carroll Baker and Eli Wallach a number of times over the years, and they had different opinions about what was happening in the story. Eli Wallach, and I think Eli, he's not here to discuss it, but I think he was wrong. He said, "Oh no, Archie Lee doesn't seduce Baby Doll.
No, not actually. He was the husband.
The
Carroll.
Carroll doesn't, Eli Wallach's character who's
Yeah.
trying to seduce her, but he doesn't actually seduce her, but that's not how you played it."
Oh no, I thought there was a definite transition from the little baby doll, the little girl, to have grown up, and she did it because she had it off with the Carroll, I think.
It has to be that way, and that's the way you play it. It has to be. I don't know what was in Eli's mind.
Well, Eli's a darling. He's a darling. I miss him so much, but he was a bit naive.
Okay. Now, we've done this before, and one time I said too much, and I said, "You know, Carol, you once told me that method acting was you stay in the character not only while you're shooting, but outside of shooting time." So while we were making the film, I fell in love with Eli Wallach. I was very mean to Carl Malden as her husband, consummated marriage.
I
and
obviously told you too much.
you told me too
I don't
much.
want to say that again.
Never say it again. You told me too much. Now, everybody who's worked with Kazan said that he was the greatest of all actors, directors. Would you go along with that? Was he one of a kind as a director?
Well, yes, and he really was the greatest actor's director. On the back of his autobiography is my quote saying that he was the greatest
was-
actors, yeah.
And you stand by that.
Oh,
What
yes.
did he have as a director that made him get through to actors so well?
Well, he was an actor himself, and he believed in the actor. The worst directors are the ones that want to tell you what to do. The theory he had was that you cast the right person and the right part, and then you let them do it.
But he would make suggestions
Oh,
subtly.
well, yeah. Sometimes he would say maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, but he would never tell you how to play a scene.
And wouldn't he get to know you personally?
Yes, he would interview you and ask you what were the qualities in the character that you could identify with, or the situations that you could identify with, or at least find a substitution for.
So that would lead you to the character, but he would never go directly and say, play it this way.
Oh, no,
Never,
no,
never.
no.
Then in Giant, you worked with another wonderful actor's director, George Stevens.
Yes, indeed, yes.
Was he different from Kazan?
Yes, he was more technical, and he believed in a great many takes because he was hoping that he wasn't going to tell you anything, but he was hoping that something special might happen if he shot it enough times.
Like, what, 30 or 40 times?
Yes, right.
Did you get impatient, or did that release
Not
something?
me.
No?
No. That was my first big film. No. And George used to have everybody dressed and in makeup and perfect hair and everything every single day because he wasn't sure what he was going to film. So I was honored as some of the other actors were, as having a trailer to sit in, and there was a couch, and especially in the ballroom scene where I had a ballroom dress and my hair was up makeup, and I found how you could lie down on your back and not move and not mess up your makeup in case you were called.
So you had to be ready at all times.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, when you were acting opposite James Dean, and you have some terrific scenes with him, did you have any thought that this young man was going to become one of the most famous and enduringly famous stars in the history of movies? I teach film history, and students get a little vague about stars from the past. There are some people that every student knows absolutely. Marilyn Monroe, Elvis Presley, James Dean. James Dean is known generation after generation.
I know, it's amazing because even you don't hear that much about Marilyn anymore or Liz Taylor, very famous people, but sort of everybody knows and wants to know about James Dean, yeah.
Did you think he was a good actor?
I thought he was a great actor. I loved his scene in East of Eden where he fell on his father and cried. Oh, I mean, that was just, who can do something like that?
Was he difficult as a person?
Well, well, the thing is that he had just recently become a star, and the first, what was it? Yeah, the first
East
movie.
of Eden was
Yeah,
East of Eden was
East of Eden,
first
and
released.
then
Rebel Without a Cause.
Rebel Without
and
a
Giant
Cause.
was third.
Yeah, and they were very close together. So Jimmy was always worried that he wouldn't be considered this star that everybody was saying he was. And George Stevens, as I said, he got everybody ready, and Jimmy thought, oh, he's doing that to me because he doesn't think I'm a big star like Elizabeth Taylor and Rock Hudson. So he was a little brat. He really was a little brat on the film. And he tried to do things like not show up when it was his scene and something like that. But nevertheless, George loved him because he learned to do things like twirl a rope and shoot a gun and all the things that you don't learn at the actor's studio.
Did he have trouble in the latter part of the film when he had to be older, play older?
Yes, I don't blame him because I think his old age makeup was terrible. I don't think
Really?
they should have made him look like that and bald and everything.
What about the old age makeup for Elizabeth Taylor and Rock Hudson?
That was pretty good,
That
I
was
thought.
good,
Yeah.
and not for James Dean.
No. And then he had this ballroom scene where he was drunk and all by himself in a ballroom. I mean, that's really, how do you act something like that? And Will and I were at the door watching Jimmy, and Jimmy gave me the greatest compliment. He said to George Stevens, I just don't know how to play this scene, but never mind, you keep it on Carroll's face because she's saying everything right there. It was a beautiful compliment.
Yes, that's a wonderful compliment.
Yeah.
Then after Giant, you have another great director, William Wyler, also famous for taking a lot of takes, and a film that isn't known as well as it should be, but it's awfully good. The Big Country with Gregory Peck, Gene Simmons, Charlton Heston, Burl Ives, who won the Academy Award. It's a terrific film. Terrific. What was William Wyler like George Stevens? He was a great actors director.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, nobody was like Kazan. He was. Yeah, he was more like George, and he liked it when people did things, when actors did things that weren't necessarily called for. Like, I said to myself, now who is this girl, this Pat? I know she's in love with her father. That's why she doesn't really connect with any of the other guys, and why Gregory Peck is going to leave her. That's a terrible thing when Gregory Peck leaves you. Gregory Peck leaves you.
But Mr. Wyler liked that interpretation?
Yes, he went along with it. And we know his daughter very well.
Yes.
We had dinner with her. And I asked her, did she realize that that's what I was doing? Because it didn't say that anywhere in the script. And she said, oh, yes, we did. And she let us know that her father thought that the sexiest combination he could think of was Charlton Heston and I.
Really?
Oh, yeah. He thought that was, woo.
Now, you worked with Charlton Heston and Gregory Peck in the same movie. Are they alike at all? Were they alike as actors? Their aura was somewhat similar. A little stiff.
I don't know. I wish you hadn't asked me that. I have no idea.
You have no idea. Then, fourth great director, not fooling around here, 2 films with John Ford. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
2 films. Cheyenne Autumn and How the West Was Won. 2 films. Actors sometimes did not like John Ford.
Well, that's just happened recently. He was a great man. I loved him.
You loved him.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and he did things like no actor was left alone. We all had lunch together. We all had dinner together. And when we had dinner together, he asked everybody to do something. So Ricardo Montalban played the guitar and sang and so forth, or tell a story, or whatever you could do. He really made a family of the people who were in the film. So if he was a bit rough on the cowboys, he was determined that you would sit up straight in the saddle. He was hard on me too. You sit up straight in the saddle, and you're gonna climb the hill. You're not gonna act like a coward. You just go ahead and climb that hill with your horse.
So he was tough.
Yeah, he was tough.
But you appreciated him.
Oh, yes, very much. Well, there was one scene where he really let me off the hook. There was this huge scene, the migration of the Indians and soldiers, and we were crossing the stream. Now, he was way up on a hill to get the big shot of this. He had sent me to work with this guy who was famous, showing you how to ride a horse.
Not Yakima Canutt.
Huh?
Yakima Canutt, the second unit director? No.
No. No, a real cowboy. And I had to learn how to drive a buckboard. And they went so far as to let me drive a stagecoach. So I really knew how to drive a buckboard. So in this long shot that had taken like an hour and a half to set up, and everybody was ready, and as we started to cross the river, I had Indian children in the buckboard, and I knew that Indian children didn't swim, so I was only thinking about them. And I had learned that if there's a hard current in the water, that you don't fight it, you go with it. So I went with it and headed straight out of the shot. The Indians, who were the stuntmen, came up and they were going to try to push me back into line, and I took my whip and I whipped them out of the way. So I was just waiting for Ford to come down off the hill, ruining that kind of a shot. So when he came up to me, he said, "Okay," he said, "you realize how long it took to set this up?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "And you did learn how to drive the buckboard?" I said, "Yes, sir." I thought maybe he was going to say I didn't do it the right thing. And he said, "And you knew the Indian children didn't swim, did you?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, that was great. You did exactly what you should have done."
Now, Carroll was in How the West Was Won in Cinerama, and the ads for the film in 1963 said 24 great stars in How the West Was Won. It's now 2019, and only one of those 24 great stars is with us, and she's right here.
I don't know how you get applause for living so long. But that's great. Thank you very much.
Yeah. But the last two of those 24 were you and your dear friend. You loved her, Debbie Reynolds.
Yeah, she was my closest girlfriend, yeah. And I just missed her so much. She did so much for me. She was a wonderful friend. Wonderful friend. We were very close.
She was that way to everybody.
Yes,
she was very friendly. She was genuinely friendly to people.
Well, and she helped people a great deal. I mean, when she was in New York on the stage on Irene, I used to go and visit her, and she had like 3 or 4 people who helped her. Now, she was going to work very hard on the stage, and she was doing the dishes, and she was sweeping. I said, "Debbie, what are you doing? You're hiring all these people. You're working hard." And she just couldn't make people do something that she thought maybe, belittled them in any way.
So she was doing it herself.
And the great thing, she was a dear friend of Marge and Gower Champion. And when Gower passed away, Marge Champion was really just down in the dumps in every way, and she didn't even have a way of making any money. And Debbie Reynolds opened a school of dance in North Hollywood and put Marge in charge of it. Gave her a new life.
And Marge is still there at age 98.
Yeah.
She's still teaching every day at age 98. Isn't that wonderful? Yes. So we want to hear about playing Harlow. That's one of your most famous roles.
Why? What do you want to hear about Harlow?
Was that not a happy experience?
Oh, no, it was terrible.
It was terrible?
Yeah. Well, Joe Levine was a new producer, and he had bought the rights. And so he had this, wonderful book that he was going to do, and we had a great director on it. I liked him. But Joe Levine just pushed me so much. I used to do publicity. He thought that he was going to be the next Mike Todd, that he was, going to be so famous for all these publicity stunts. And he rented the Queen Mary, for heaven's sakes, and took the breasts and not all the actors, just me. I got so tired. I mean, having to talk to these people all the time and be dressed up all the time and have your hair done and the makeup. And that's why I'm so happy to be retired. I really am. I love the fact that I don't have to get out of bed early in the morning. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? Yeah.
When you were making the film, did you get to know Harlow? Did you feel you got to know her? Did you do a lot of research?
Well, in the early days, in like Harlow's days, you didn't know who anybody was because the publicity department created who you were. And but apparently there were a lot of people in Hollywood who absolutely loved her. And they would come up to me and one of them would say, "Don't you dare present Jean as a drunk. She wasn't a drunk. Okay, she liked her vodka, but she was not a drunk." And then somebody else would say, "Don't ever say that she was too loose morally. Don't ever say that about. So, I wasn't writing the script, you know.
Now, talking of images, because of Baby Doll, you were in some ways branded as a sex object or a sex star, and you were an actress. You didn't want that.
No.
So Warner Brothers gave you the part
Wait,
of an...
wait. It's mine. Okay. I got a lot of attention from Baby Doll, and there was a lot of talk about how sensual it was. So I was under contract to Warner Brothers, and they wanted to find sexy little Southern girls, you know, who did everything, fun and everything. And I kept turning down the movies. Now, that wasn't easy for me because I wasn't even earning that much money, but they stopped. I couldn't work for anybody else because I was under contract. So I turned down one thing after another. And finally, they came to me and said, "We've got something you cannot turn down." And I said, "Really, what?" "You can play a nun." "Oh, okay." Now, I didn't really see the script, The Miracle, but playing a nun, I thought, all right, look, I'm not going to be typecast as Baby Doll if I'm a nun. Well, it turns out that I wasn't a nun. I was a postulate. And I was only a postulate for like 5 minutes of screen time before Roger Moore, who was so gorgeous, rode by on a white horse and he had a red uniform. And the next thing you know, we're out in the field and they pan up as they do to show the wind in the trees and so forth. You know what that was supposed to mean. And then, from then on, this girl went around the world. She had everybody in the whole world. She had a bullfighter and a gypsy. She was the biggest tart ever put on the screen.
So it wasn't exactly escaping typecasting.
Not at all.
But then you did play a part in a film which really was terrific, Something Wild, which was not a success at the time, but it has been rediscovered, and it's in a Criterion Deluxe release, and it's shown in Europe, and if you haven't seen it, see it. Do you know that film? Something Wild, with an original score by Aaron Copland. It's one of the first, if not the first, Hollywood films about rape and the psychology of a rape victim. And it's really a powerful film, beautifully shot by Carroll's then husband, Jack Garfien. And I've been a big proponent of that film, I have to say.
Oh, I know. He's not just a big... He is the one who's made it famous and brought it back. He's talked to every movie audience everywhere and talked about it. And then they brought it back. And that's Foster who did that.
And when we showed it in Palm Springs, I'll never forget, at the end when I called you up, you came up to the stage teary-eyed, seeing yourself in that film. Do you remember that?
Yeah, because I didn't like it. I didn't like that film. I didn't like the part I had to play.
You didn't? You still don't like the film?
No.
You don't like it?
No. Well, it was the time of the independent film just getting started. And I don't know, I always needed money. I never had enough money. So my husband was a director, but he had been a big success in New York, and every time they presented him with the script, he was like afraid to do it. So I was sort of on my own. And he came up with this idea. He liked the book. We knew the author very well, and he got it published by or put on by United Artists. So this was one of those films where nobody earned any money, but I mean no money at all. And we had to skimp and save. I used to count the bobby pins that were going to go in my hair in case the hairdresser was, being too extravagant. So, yeah, I know the film is pretty good, but we were a company known as Prometheus, and as it was an art film and didn't do very well, Prometheus went back to the underworld. And I would have liked to have made something that was a success, something, more in some kind of a genre that would earn some money, because then we could have gone on making movies for United Artists.
And that film ended that
That ended
possibility.
it, yeah.
But you have the satisfaction of history has said this is an important landmark film.
If you say so. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk just briefly about some of the later films, then we'll get to your writing in the book. You were in Ironweed with Jack Nicholson and Meryl Streep.
Uh-huh.
Were they good to work with?
Well, I didn't have an awful lot to do in that. I think Jack and I, we've known each other for years, and I knew him before he did anything, and I always knew he was going to be a star. He was so sure of himself. He was really terrific. So I think the relationship, the husband and wife relationships, again, it was such a downtrodden film. I mean, old clothes and making a big fuss over the fact that we happen to have a turkey for Thanksgiving. And we were in Albany. I hope nobody hears from Albany, because I thought that was so ugly. That was a terrible place. So I was faced with this ugliness all day long. So when I would get in my room at night, I could order dinner in, and I ordered lobster and steak every night. I said, okay, I'm not that poor. I'm going to eat a good meal.
Then in Native Son, another happy story, you play a blind woman.
Yes, I don't know what happened to Native Son. I never saw it. Did anybody see it?
Yes.
Oh, did you?
It's good.
Is it?
It's good. It's forgotten. It's never seen. But you play a blind woman very convincingly.
Yeah.
And then in Kindergarten Cop, you're very mean.
Yeah, for once I got to play a villain. Yeah, it was to shoot Arnold Schwarzenegger was a great thrill. It was a great thrill. But actually, I liked Arnold very much. And he was like a big kid. He just liked to have fun. Such a big star, and Ivan Reitman, very nice director, used to really tell him off. I've never heard a director tell a big star like, he'd say, Arnold, for God's sake, sit down, we're going to do the scene now. And then Arnold would go on talking, and he'd say, Arnold, this is costing money, can we please get on with the scene? So there was a scene that I had where I tried to run the policewoman over with my car. And I was in the basement shooting at Arnold, and the policewoman comes in and says, you're not so strong or smart or something without your car, are you? And she hits me with a baseball bat. She really hit me. So it was the same suit, but it was a bigger size, and I had padding everywhere. And we had a stunt director, Joel, and before every take, he used to adjust me and make sure that there was no part of my flesh that might get hit. And at a certain take, he was fussing around in the back and going down the side of my back. I said, what the hell are you doing, Joel? And it was Arnold. It was Arnold.
This is the last film question, then we'll talk about the book. But this audience will want to know, you were directed on film by Bob Fosse in Star 80. What was he like as a director?
He was very intense. I loved some of the work that he did. Well, not just the great dancing, but also that movie about him. I loved it. Yeah, I loved that.
You loved that?
Yeah. Well, the thing is that I disagreed with him about who my character was, but I did it the way he wanted it. My feeling was that they were kind of a corny family, and she was a really working woman, and that she actually, as the mother, she was just as taken with this guy as her daughter was, and that she would be very nice to him and everything like that. But Bobby wanted me to be very strong and tell him off and so forth. Well, I thought that was a bit too sophisticated, but I did it his way.
You didn't see her as that
No,
sophisticated.
not at all. And as a matter of fact, in the narrative that goes on, the dialogue in the background, it was the fact that the mother did go along with it.
That's historically.
Yeah,
This woman, your daughter, is murdered by this man.
Yes.
It's a very good film, actually.
Yeah, it is.
It's
Yeah.
very good. Okay, now we want to hear about who killed Big Al.
Now, I'm going to shock you. I'm very sorry. I didn't understand that it was going to be such a small audience. And I didn't understand what wonderful work is done here. So I am going to, and I sent far too many books. I sent enough for another 3 or 4 roomfuls like this. I'm going to give you the books. I'm not going to charge you for it. No charge. But if you'd like me to sign it, I'll be very happy.
Well, everybody will have Carroll Baker sign, but still we want to hear about it anyway.
No.
You don't
you're
want to talk about it.
No, you're going to read it.
You're going to read it instead of
Yeah.
talking about it.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Come on, kitties.
Okay. Okay. So we any 1 or 2 questions from the audience, or are we done?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, 1 or 2 questions, and then we're done. Yes, Lee.
Foster, I'd like to ask Ms. Baker, one of your biggest hits in the 60s was the Carpetbaggers. Quite controversial based on the Harold Robbins novel. Do you have any memories or anecdotes you can share about making the
Making the Carpetbaggers.
Making the carpetbaggers. Oh, I forgot. Yeah, I thought it was great fun. And I had stayed away from sexy parts because I just didn't want to be known as just this bubble-headed, I don't know what. But I had done nothing but westerns and pure parts and so forth. But when it came around, and I liked the Carpetbaggers very much, and I thought, hey, I can do this. I'll no longer be cast as sexy. The whole sex thing started again. But I did enjoy doing it. I really did.
Yeah. And you liked playing opposite Alan Ladd, who was legendary.
Yes. Well, he was very sad. It was very sad. Apparently, his wife, who had engineered his career all along, had taken the son, who was an actor, under her wing, and Alan was drinking a lot. Paramount had one more film that Alan was supposed to do, so he wouldn't have been cast except the fact that, he had this film and he was working for practically nothing. But he would forget his lines. And he got so upset. One day he had a glass of whiskey. Well, in the Carpetbaggers, everybody had a glass of whiskey. And he couldn't remember, and he took that glass and he went through the glass door, and all the blood was hanging. Oh, it was terrible. So I said I wasn't going to say anything nasty about George Peppard, but I will say one thing. Okay. Alan used to say to the script girl, please don't write that down. She used to write down when people forgot their lines. So most of it, when we worked with Alan, and you could tell that the other actor suddenly didn't know what was going to happen, you would raise your hand and say, I'm sorry, we have to stop, I forgot my line. So everybody would do that, except our friend George. He was not nice.
And so he would, and then you said something to George.
Oh, I said to him, hey, you've got a break here. You will never be as great as Alan was. Never.
Another question, Neil?
As somebody who had experience with the HB studio and Actors Studio, can you tell if there was any difference or how they were different?
Well, my daughter went to the HB,
No.
yeah, and I sent her there because I had studied with Lee Strasberg, and as a matter of fact, he was the godfather to my daughter, but I thought that Lee sort of tied people up in knots, and Uta Hagen was so free and so forth. So I sent her to that school. As a matter of fact, I did the audition with her. And I thought I was disguised, but Uta saw me. She knew it.
Pat, did you have a
I
question?
just want to ask, could you talk about your life as a writer?
Your life as a writer, yes.
My life as a writer.
Good question.
Oh, yes. Well,
How did it happen?
well, I guess I always liked writing, and in grade school in Pennsylvania, they had a contest. I think at that time, I was probably like 8 years old, and it was all the public schools, the 8-year-olds who were supposed to write a short story and then be judged by the Pittsburgh Press, and I won. Yeah, so that was, yeah.
And this terrific book, which you're all going to get a copy of, is actually Carroll's 4th book. She's
Yeah.
not a novice writer.
Yeah,
3 other books, and they're all good.
yeah.
Baby Doll, an autobiography. A Roman Tale, a very bawdy novel set during La Dolce Vita period. And To Africa with Love,
Yeah.
which you wrote after you had made Mr. Moses in Africa with
Yeah.
Robert Mitchum.
Yeah, I loved Africa. I
Yeah.
just had to spend time there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had to write a book about it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just want to ask you back to the big country. Charles Bickford, what was it like working with Charles Bickford?
Charles Bickford, did you?
Oh yeah, Charles Bickford. Oh, he was so angry with me because, as I said, my interpretation of the character in The Big Country was the fact that she was really in love with her father. Is the reason she couldn't find a man who equaled him in any way. So Bickford and his other cowboy friends were standing on the porch, and Wyler didn't tell me anything. I came out and I went up to Bickford and I kissed him on the cheek. Oh, he thought that was so. He said, I won't have it. I won't have it. I won't have it. That's not my character. I said, no, but it's my character and you will have it.
Okay, last question, ma'am. Yeah, yeah.
Ms. Baker, could you talk about working with Robert Mitchum? I had heard that he was always completely prepared for any of his roles, and I just would love to hear your comments.
Robert Mitchum, was he always prepared for his work?
Oh, yeah, but he was wonderful. He used to make up his own lines, and they were much better than the script. And we were, when you do a movie, they put the stars next to each other. And we were in Africa, and we had cabins and so forth, and I was next to him in a cabin, and he used to come out with his bare chest and walk around, and I was going crazy. I played music very loud, and I wrote letters, and I did everything else. But nevertheless, the press did come out and say, that we were having an affair. So one day I said to Mitchum, they're saying we're having an affair. He said, I'm sorry, I missed that.
Okay. Now, I have to say, has this not been a terrific interview?
Thank you.
And also, doesn't Carroll Baker have a wonderful speaking voice?
It hasn't changed.
Hasn't changed. It has not changed at all. Come up and say hello and get your book.